Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be asking the question, is paying up truly worth it? We're going to be going through our cheap versus expensive fantasy options for auction drafts. Joe, I don't know about you, but we debuted this episode last year. It was one of my favorites that we did, and honestly was a great thought exercise. Had you listened to our episode talking about this, I think it could have helped you greatly. And I'm not just saying that to pat ourselves on the back. I just think it really was an interesting discussion as far as paying up for these star players or, going for some of the cheap bargains. And sometimes those cheap bargains, the one that sticks out in my mind, we talked about Brock Bowers versus Sam Laporta, paying all that money for Laporta versus getting Bowers. And had you picked Bowers over Laporta, that could have changed the outcome of your season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, ultimately, especially with Brock Bowers finishing and ended up being the tight end one, and Laporta, ended up with the regression that we thought he would. So he definitely would have benefited greatly from that one.
All right, so for our first battle, we've got running back Jahmyr Gibbs on the expensive side for $54, and on the cheap side, you've got running back Breece Hall at $17. So, Joe, would you rather have Breece Hall at $17 or Jahmyr Gibbs at $54?
Yeah, this is interesting. I feel like Breece Hall, is kind of getting compared to the Jahmyr Gibbs role now that Aaron Glenn is kind of coming over from that Detroit Lions coaching staff. And, especially with Braylon Allen's kind of getting, I feel like, compared, he's the bigger back to the David Montgomery situation. At the end of the day, I think I'd still rather pay up for Jahmyr Gibbs, though. We've just seen it, and he's just so elusive and explosive. Not to say that Breece Hall isn't, but we've seen it more from, Jahmyr Gibbs at this point. Breece Hall has been kind of a disappointment. And then honestly, I like just getting guys from good offenses, and the Lions have been the better offense.
Are you concerned a little bit that Ben Johnson is no longer the offensive coordinator? Will the offense not be as creative that really highlights Jahmyr Gibbs?
I honestly, at one point I was kind of worried about that, but I'm starting to not be as concerned. I know people are kind of comparing it to the Philadelphia Eagles situation. I just don't think people give Dan Campbell enough credit. And I think he has a lot of influence. And honestly, I feel like he took Ben Johnson under his wing and, taught him some things and gave him, some of this flexibility, maybe some of these ideas for some of these trick plays. So I'm curious to see how much the Lions offense really does skip a beat, or, well, I guess we'll see if I'm correct. And does Dan Campbell really have a good involvement in this?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting debate. I think I lean towards Gibbs as well, only because he's a sure thing. So long as he doesn't get injured, we anticipate, right? I mean, I do think when David Montgomery was out, Gibbs was a huge benefactor, and I think people forget that.
Yeah, people do forget that because, he really took off once Montgomery wasn't there, and people don't realize Montgomery was having a good year before he did get injured as well. So we'll see. Breece Hall is extra motivated. We talked about him in his contract year here. He's already saying, Jets don't really want him there. So I'm sure he's going to be looking to put on a show for those other teams to possibly go get him in free agency next year.
Yeah, look, I don't think it's crazy. I really don't. If you're looking at, let's see, do some simple math here. $54 with Gibbs, subtract that by $17. That puts you at 37.
Yep.
That means you could have Josh Jacobs and Breece Hall for the price of Jahmyr Gibbs. Or Derrick Henry and Breece Hall for the price of Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, man, it is interesting when you put it that way. What the couple of guys that you could get for the price of one Jahmyr Gibbs. Yeah.
So keep that in mind. I don't think it's crazy to go on the cheaper side in this debate.
Yeah, no. I think, like you said, though, I think it matters, who you can possibly pair up. You have your kind of two backs could you get to kind of equate to Jahmyr Gibbs one price. All right, so I guess we'll go with our next battle here. And, we'll go back to that tight end position. We'll go with Trey McBride of the Arizona Cardinals versus the rookie coming in Colston Loveland with the Chicago Bears. What do you think, Stevie? You going for the expensive Trey McBride here, or kind of like last year, going with the up and coming rookie that'll give you the return on your investment.
Yeah, McBride at $34 based on the ESPN cheat sheet. Colston, Loveland $1. I think I would go with Colston, Loveland on this one. I think that, Bowers is in a better position than Loveland is. I think it's somewhat of a congested room in Chicago. But I say that, but when we think about Laporta, a big thing was his touchdowns.
Yeah.
And so what says that Loveland can't do that for the Chicago Bears? And I actually do think that McBride may be in a little bit of regression, to be honest with you. We'll see if Marvin Harrison Jr. actually becomes more of a factor. But if he does, I think that would impact McBride. I just don't like the price. To me, paying $34 for a tight end just seems awfully high to me. And if he doesn't do well, that's going to set your team back quite significantly.
Yeah. I think I lean the Trey McBride side. I even though I really do like Colston Loveland, I don't know. I think this is different. It's not as clear of a path as Brock Bowers had with the Raiders last year, and there's a lot of, it's interesting. There's the untapped potential of Colston Loveland. Does he become that Sam Laporta in Ben Johnson's offense in Chicago? I could see it, but I do think, one thing for Trey McBride is I believe he's in for some positive touchdown regression, because I believe he only had maybe 1 or 2 touchdowns last year. And I know one of his touchdowns came off of a fumble recovery in the end zone. So maybe he doesn't get as many receiving yards because maybe, that rapport with Marvin Harrison Jr. increases in Kyler Murray. But if he does go ahead and get more of those touchdowns, he will, quickly still be one of the top tight ends.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Next battle we got here, and this one's going to be a fun one for those of you who like stacks. Joe and I talked about this prior to the show, and we thought this was really interesting. So you got Dak Prescott and George Pickens. So Dak Prescott at $2 and George Pickens at $9 for the cheap option. On the expensive side, you've got Joe Burrow at $21 and then T. Higgins at $32. So, in both offenses, you've got that alpha receiver in Jahmyr Chase, respectively, and CeeDee Lamb. So you're basically saying, hey, can Pickens be that Higgins dynamic? And would you rather have the cheaper side with the Cowboys version or the more expensive side with the Bengals?
Yeah, I think I'd go with the Cowboys side, to be honest with you. Take the swing for $11. Just because there is a chance. It's very interesting. I've seen people talking about it. I really do think the Cowboys are the NFC version of the Cincinnati Bengals. Their defense absolutely sucks. Their offense is, and they're not going to have a run game. So the Cowboys are going to be passing a ton. It's really just a question of Dak Prescott staying healthy. And on the other side of the Bengals, Joe Burrow was able to stay healthy last year, had a really good year, but we know T. Higgins isn't able to stay healthy. So Pickens, health really hasn't been much of a concern over his career thus far. So I'd lean the Cowboys.
I think I lean towards the Cowboys too. I mean, I think that they're going to be, you look at the Dallas Cowboys run game. Don't know. I think it could be non-existent, and they're going to have to throw a ton. I think Pickens and Lamb are going to be having a field day, and so will Higgins and Chase as well. But why spend all that more money? That's the thing I struggle with. I mean, you're paying 21 for Burrow, and then with T. Higgins paying 32, so that's a whopping $53 compared to 11.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, think about what you could do with all that extra dough.
Yeah, I mean that's $42 extra you got to spend. Yeah, and I mean you're looking at one of the upper echelon running backs, wide receivers, whatever you want at that point. Or
AJ Brown, that's a Jonathan Taylor. To me that makes total sense.
Yeah. As hard as it is not to want to have a piece of that Cincinnati Bengals offense, I think with the value, I mean, and the one key thing is if Dak is able to stay healthy, I think there is potential for them to be the NFC Bengals, and you'll be really happy. And then along with the extra piece that you'd potentially get on your team. So our next battle we're going to go with is going to be quarterback Jalen Hurts versus a guy I like a lot here, Steve, and quarterback Drake Maye. And currently Jalen Hurts is sitting at the QB4, priced out at $26 versus Drake Maye, who's listed as the QB15, going for $1. And, both have similar rushing upside. Which way you lean, Steve? Expensive or the cheaper option in Drake Maye?
Yeah, you like him so much that in our 16-team dynasty league, you just traded 2 first-round picks for him. So I'd say you liked him quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. I do. I mean, in our our league, it's 16 teams. Like you mentioned, you got to have a quarterback. So I did not. So yeah, I paid the price.
Yeah, I'm going to go on the May side here. I think Jalen Hurts, he's a guy I just don't get excited about. And I don't like the idea of paying him $26. I can't justify that. I mean, I'd rather go with the dollar flyer, uh, with Drake May. I mean, he was quarterback 8 this past season, then quarterback 2, quarterback 3, quarterback 9. If he's not quarterback 2 or 3, I have no interest in him. So, and really, a lot of where his values is those running touchdowns. So right now the tush push is still alive and well. If that ever went away, Hurts would be even more significantly impacted. But I think I'd rather take the $1 flyer on May.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, taking the $1 flyer on May, like I said, who still possesses that rushing upside. Not sure he'll get as, rushing touchdowns will probably still go to the Jalen Hurts there. But if he, Patriots have done everything to really put together a solid offensive group in front of Drake May, address the offensive line with the draft, drafting Will Campbell at the number 4 pick, then bringing in Stephon Diggs, Kyle Williams coming in as a rookie as well. They got Jahmyr Douglas, drafting Travion Henderson, who I think they're going to use heavily in the receiving game. And he's also, one of the best pass protectors in terms of the rookie running backs coming out of this draft class. So I really liked how things are shaping up in New England.
Our last battle is going to be a battle between 2 sophomore receivers going to their second year. On the cheap side, we've got wide receiver Rome Odunze for the Chicago Bears going for $7. And in the other corner, we've got wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jacksonville Jaguars going for $43. Joe, what say you? Who would you rather have in this battle?
Yeah, at this point, I lean the Rome Odunze side and being able to save that money, even though I really like Brian Thomas Jr.
I know you do. I'm shocked you went that way.
Yeah, but I just don't like his price though. I mean, like I'm getting him as a keeper in a couple of leagues at $7 and $8, so I really like that. But to have to pay 43 to pay $43 for him is kind of crazy, especially being that, we've talked about on other episodes as well. Like Mac Jones is what unlocked Brian Thomas Jr. He didn't nearly have he was good with Trevor Lawrence in the beginning of the year, but not as good as when Mac Jones took over. And, now they draft Travis Hunter. Liam Cohen's coming over as a new head coach as well. There's a lot of kind of unknowns and have to pay the hefty $43 for Brian Thomas Jr. when, Rome Odunze is also coming into his second year. Yes, Ben Johnson's changing up the offense, but at least he's get the sticks with Caleb Williams, and we've seen them have a pretty good rapport. And DJ Moore doesn't seem quite as scary as the opposite receiver either.
No, I agree. And I definitely lean towards Rome Odunze's side as well on this. I think that this could, let's not forget Rome Odunze, when he was coming into the draft here, he was 1C. Yeah, 1A Marvin Harrison, 1B Malik Neighbors, 1C was Rome Odunze. Rome Odunze was very highly touted coming out of college and highly regarded in the draft community. So I think that you're telling me that Ben Johnson's not going to find ways to get this guy involved in the offense with the chemistry that Rome Odunze has with Caleb Williams, so long as Caleb Williams, isn't playing hero ball and throwing a ton of interceptions and taking a bunch of sacks. I'm with you. I mean, Cohen could unlock Brian Thomas Jr. more. I think that's possible. It's just, what's your confidence in Trevor Lawrence? I mean, I think my confidence in him is very shaky. I mean, they thought this guy was going to be the next Patrick Mahomes and he was going to dominate the league, and he's been pretty suspect.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the kind of the trouble for both of these guys. I don't know how much. I don't have too much faith in Trevor Lawrence as we just haven't seen it yet, but maybe Liam Cohen can simplify things and figure things out for him. I also don't really trust Caleb Williams that much, but at least I think, we've at least seen, the rapport that's there between the two of them, and just being able to, I mean, you could get Rome Odunze, for $7 and even, spend a little bit more, get Drake London at 40, and that's $4 more than just one Brian Thomas Jr., who may not return to what he was last year. That's the problem. I feel like you're drafting Brian Thomas Jr. at his ceiling already, and versus, you're getting Odunze at $7, which is more so his floor.
Yeah, London Odunze pairing would be a drop in the bucket compared to Brian Thomas.
Yeah, and I mean for $4 more, if that value holds.
Absolutely. So that does it for this episode. We asked the question, is paying up worth it? And when you go through it, it really makes you question whether it is worth paying up top dollar for these big stars, or is it better to go the cheap route where you get some bargain players who could potentially break out and help you win your leagues? Hopefully that helped you start going through this exercise for yourself as you are preparing for your leagues. If you haven't done so already, check out our most recent episode. We talked about how to use nominations to control your auction draft. There's not enough conversation about nominations. It's the one thing that you can control in your drafts. Why not check that out? Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.